Alrighty guys, so this is your lesson for absolute value. Alright, so if you turn your packets to the page about absolute value, it talks about to solve an absolute value equation. Before we even get to there, I just want to review. What is absolute value, right? So I'm sure you guys all remember the big trick for absolute value is whatever number's in there, just make it positive, right? I just want to talk about what absolute value actually is. So, let's say this is your house. Right. You live here. That's home. Then you got, 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks over here. Then you have a buddy that lives here, Bobby. We'll call that B. Then you got 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks over here. And here's your other friend. We'll call them Casey, right? And here's your house, right? You live right on an intersection, so there's a road right next to your house, okay? If you wanted to go visit your friend Bobby, how many blocks would you need to walk? Well, you would need to walk 1, 2, 3 blocks to get to your friend Bobby's house. If you wanted to go visit your friend Casey from your house, it would be 1, 2, 3 blocks to go to Casey's. So, see how when you're going to visit Bobby, you don't say, I walked -3 blocks. You can't walk negative. That doesn't make any sense. When you're moving forward, you're moving forward. So the whole point of absolute value is you're saying the distance between 0 and that number. And that's why whether it's, we'll just say this is west and this is east, whether it's west 3 streets or east 3 streets, no matter what, you're walking 3 blocks, all right? So if this was -3 on our number line, we would say the absolute value of -3 is 3. And that's because the distance between 0 and 3 is 3 spaces, right? Just like the absolute value of 3 is also to equal 3 because there are 3 spaces in between the two. All right, so I just wanted to do that review real quick. Now we're going to hop into the new stuff. All right, so now you should be on that page and you're seeing the 3 steps on how to solve an absolute value equation. All righty, so first things first, just like when we solve for anything, variables, so on and so forth, right? What's the first thing we always do? We have to isolate that. So first step, isolate the absolute value. Okay? So what isolate means, in case you've forgotten, get absolute value on one side of the equal sign, everything else on the other. We isolate, okay? Step 2. We're going to split into 2 equations. Okay? So what that means is we take what's inside our absolute value, all right? So I'll make it red squiggles, right? So our red squiggles are what's inside our absolute value. Now we're going to take this equation we have here and split it off into 2 directions. So first we're going to have red squiggles are equal to the black squiggle. But we also have the red squiggle is equal to the negative of the black squiggle. So whatever was on that side of the equation you make it the positive, and the negative is equal to whatever was inside of the absolute value, okay? Our absolute value bars are now gone. Finally, step 3, solve both equations. All right? So you'll have a variable that will be inside this red squiggle, and we solve, okay? And that's how we're able to solve absolute value equations. The way to remember this, ISS, International Space Station, if you want to think of it that way, but it's ISS. Maybe even a little bit more relatable to some of you, in school suspension, all right? So ISS, if you can remember that, you can remember isolate, split, solve. And those are the 3 steps on how to solve an absolute value equation. So now what we're going to do is get rid of these squiggles, go on to example 1, and actually put one to work. Alrighty, we're on to example 1, and we have the absolute value of r minus 10 is equal to 20. So we're going through ISS. Isolate the absolute value. That's done, right? We have absolute value on one side, everything else on the other. Step 2, split. So we're going to take what's in the absolute value, r minus 10 is equal to the positive 20. And then we're going to also have what's inside the absolute value, r minus 10 is equal to the negative 20. Finally, we solve both equations. So now it's just solving for a variable like we always do. How do we get r by itself? We're going to add 10 to both sides, because whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Those 10s cancel. We get r equals 30. Over here, add 10 to both sides. Oh, not equals. Add 10. Those 10s cancel. We get r equals negative 10. Because remember, positive and positive, add them together. Negative and negative, add them together, take the negative. Negative and positive, subtract, take the sign of the bigger. So 20 minus 10 is 10. What's bigger, 20 or 10? 20, negative 10. And this right here would be my final answer. Now I know it wasn't in your 3 steps, but there is a 4th step. As always, we check. All right? So let's check the first one. The absolute value of 30 minus 10 is equal to 20. Absolute values are like parentheses. You have to do what's inside of them first. Then you can get rid of them just like you would a parentheses. So we have 30 minus 10 is equal to the absolute value of 20 equals 20. And absolute value of 20 is 20, so 20 equals 20. Check. Awesome. Now we're going to do negative 10. Replace r with negative 10. We have the absolute value of negative 10 minus 10 is equal to 20. Minus and minus, we add them together, take the sign. 10 plus 10, 20. The sign is negative. Absolute value of negative 20 is equal to 20. What's the absolute value of negative 20? 20 equals 20. Check. So now that we've checked both, we know our answer is correct, and we can move on to the next problem. Speaking of which, go ahead and do examples 2, 3, and 4 by yourself. Alrighty, hopefully you gave those problems a shot. For number 2, you should have found x equals 19 and x equals negative 1. You can write it like this, or you can write it x equals 19, x equals negative 1, circle both of them. That is also fine. Alright, you want to talk about that real quick, what you do, it's already isolated. Set it equal to 10 and negative 10. Add 9 to both sides for both problems, you'll get 19 and negative 1. Moving on, we have absolute value of n plus 8 equals 12. From there, you should get m equals 4 and m equals negative 20. Again, already isolated. You're just subtracting 8 from both problems. And number 4, we have k equals 7 and k equals negative 21. So hopefully you had luck with those. And then continue on. Let's see. Continue on and do 5, 6, and 7. I want to talk about number 8. So go ahead and give those next 3 a shot. And we'll get back together. Alrighty, hopefully you gave 5, 6, and 7 a shot. As I always say, don't be afraid of fractions. So it is okay to have fractions for answers. You can see we got a fraction in every single problem. So for the first one, we get m equals 23 over 3 and negative 19 over 3. For number 6, we get 11 over 2 and negative 7. And for number 7, we get x equals 29 over 3 and x equals negative 3. So hopefully you had some luck with those. If not, look over your work, see where you made a mistake, see if you can find those answers. Otherwise, we're going to move on to number 8. And number 8 is the absolute value of negative 6r plus 8 is equal to 4. Okay? So, again, isolate, done. Split. We get negative 6r plus 8 is equal to 4, and negative 6r plus 8 is equal to negative 4. Now, we said when you take the absolute value of something, you make it positive, right? But whatever's in there, I want you to rewrite exactly. There's a negative 6 inside that absolute value. There's a negative 6 when you're solving. Because what you're asking yourself is, what can I plug in for r to make this absolute value 4? So basically what you're saying is, what can I plug in for r to get either 4 or negative 4? Because those are my only 2 answers for the absolute value of 4. And that's exactly how it's written. Okay? So, we solve. We subtract 8 from both sides. Subtract 8. We're going to get negative 6r is equal to negative 4. Divide both sides by 6. You get r equals negative divided by negative is a positive. So we're going to get 2/3. Alright, I just reduced right there. So you get 4 over 6. But I can pull a 2 out of both of those and get 2/3. Over here, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I get negative 6r is equal to negative 12. Divide by a negative 6. And I get r is equal to positive 2. So, I did say don't be afraid of fractions, but make sure when you have a fraction that can reduce, you are reducing. You will lose a point on quizzes if you do not reduce. Okay? Don't use decimals because then you'll end up with rounding errors, so on and so forth. I want exact answers. Fractions are exact answers. All right? So for number 8, you should have gotten negative 2/3 or positive 2/3, positive 2. We're going to go ahead and move on to number 9, and this is going to be our first example of when we have to isolate. Alrighty, so on to number 9, the first one we have to isolate. So isolate, like I said, just like with variables, if this was a plus 10 equals 21, what will we do? First thing we do, get rid of that 10. It's the exact same process. So we have absolute value of x plus 1 plus 10 equals 21. What's the opposite of plus 10? Well, we're going to subtract 10. All right? Then we end up with the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to, and that's, nope, it's 11. Almost rewrote 21. Is 11. Okay? We have successfully isolated. I is done. On to our first S. Let's split. So, we have x plus 1 equals 11, and x plus 1 equals negative 11. Now we simply subtract 1 from both sides on both problems. And 11 minus 1, we get x equals 10. negative 11 minus 1, both negative, add them together, 12, take the sign, negative 12. So our answer for this is x equals 10 and x equals negative 12. Hopefully that made sense. Go ahead and give number 10 a shot, and then we'll talk about number 11 together. Alrighty, hopefully for number 10 you got a equals 20 and a equals negative 4. I want to move on to number 11, which we have 3 times the absolute value of p plus 4 is equal to 6. Alright. I know earlier I said it was like a parentheses. Do not distribute. We're isolating that absolute value. Think of the absolute value like a term, like a variable, right? So imagine it's like 3x equals 6. How would you solve this? You would divide both sides by 3 and get x equals 2. We're doing the exact same thing. So, need an eraser. Let me grab a paper towel. Alright, so we're going to do the exact same thing here. We are going to divide by 3. Those 3's cancel. We're left with the absolute value of p plus 4 is equal, and that is 2. Alright, now that we've isolated, we split. So we get p plus 4 is equal to 2. P plus 4 is equal to negative 2. Now we just solve for p, subtract 4 from both sides. And we get p equals negative 2, p equals negative 6. Alright? So when you have something times the absolute value, divide, do not distribute. Alright? Go ahead and give 12, 13, 14 a shot. And then I want to talk about 15. And then you guys can do 16 by yourself to finish it off. Alrighty? Hopefully for 12, you're able to get k equals 10 and negative 12. 13, you're able to get p equals 10 and negative 8. And 14, x equals negative 8 and 7. Alright? 15 I want to talk about because fractions still scare people. Putting on our Algebra 1B pants, and we're going to head this fraction, or we're going to attack this fraction head on. Alright? So, what are fractions really? Well, it's just division. So, again, imagine this absolute value is just the variable x. We have x over 7 is equal to 3. How do we get rid of a fraction? Well, we multiply, right? So we're going to multiply both sides by 7. And the reason that works is 7 is really 7 over 1. And when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. So we get 7 times the absolute value of that over 7. Your 7's cancel, and you're left with just the absolute value of 1 plus 9x is equal to, and then we have 3 times 7, which is 21. We successfully have isolated. Now we are going to split. So we get 1 plus 9x is equal to 21, and we get 1 plus 9x is equal to negative 21. Subtract 1 from both sides. 1's cancel. We're left with 9x equals negative 22. And we over here, we get 9x is equal to 20. We divide both sides by 9 in all problems. And our final answers here are x equals negative 22 over 9. And over here we get x equals 20 over 9. So, hopefully you're able to get that. Do number 16 by yourself. I am not going to show the answer. This is the end of the video. This proves that you're not just following along skipping through and plugging in the answers. Make sure you're showing all of your work. If you do not show work and you just have answers like this, you will not receive credit for today. All right? So give number 16 a shot by yourself. Discuss it with classmates. That's fine. Show your work. I'm not going to tell you the correct answer. And then make sure you submit this to Schoology. Have a great day.